Lang nerds, welcome to eLang Explained. This video is a part of our core curriculum series where we break down some of the key concepts and pieces of metalanguage from Units 1 to 4 English Language. Today, we're going to be talking about politeness strategies and breaking down the difference between positive and negative face and looking at some strategies for analysing these concepts in a text that you probably haven't seen before. So, let's start at the beginning. You might be surprised to know that every human has two faces, a positive and negative face. And while there are definitely some negative connotations attached to the idea of having a negative face, it's really important to remember that both of these faces are equal and they both play a really important role in the way that we as human beings communicate with each other. So our positive face is all about a person's need to be respected and to feel as though they belong in a specific context. Whereas your negative face is all about a person's need to have autonomy and control in a specific context. Now, context is really important whenever we're talking about face, because the way that we use language to show that a person has control or to show respect to a person to show that they belong is different depending on who we're talking to. It's different depending on the tenor that we have with that person. It's also different depending on the setting that we find ourselves in. And so whenever we're talking about face, it's really important to remember that you'll probably also be talking about some of the expectations of language in the situational and cultural context. We'll dig a little bit more into positive face now and have a talk about some acts that can impact positive face. The way we talk about language that impacts face is by breaking this down into two different categories. So we have, on the one hand, politeness, and these are acts that maintain a person's face. And then we have threatening acts, and these are acts that challenge a person's face. So for our positive politeness strategies, these are language choices that maintain or enhance the positive face of a specific group or individual. And this is where individuals, groups, organizations are using language to make a specific group or individual feel as though they belong and they are respected. Conversely, positive face-threatening acts refer to those language choices that challenge or threaten the positive face of a specific group or individual. And these are language choices that make a person feel as though they are not respected or they do not belong in this situational context. Now, it's really important when we're discussing face to remember that one language feature in some situational contexts represent a positive politeness strategy, but in others represent a strategy that threatens positive face. So if we take a look at teen slang, for example, when you're talking with your friends and you are using lots of teen slang, that may absolutely be a marker of positive politeness because you're using language that within the context of a conversation between other teenagers, you're using language that shows that you belong to this in-group. However, if you were talking to a teacher or a parent or an older person who isn't able to understand this slang because they're not in that in-group of young people, then this may become a face-threatening act because through your language choices, you're signaling that this person doesn't quite belong here. And I think that we are seeing that a lot at the moment, certainly in lots of classrooms, with the 6-7 meme, which of course we know is very popular with young people in October of 2025. But it's not something that adults are very familiar with. And so here, calling out 6-7 in class might be something where a young person is trying to use a positive politeness strategy. They're trying to show belonging with other young people. But in fact, it might be seen as a face-threatening act by teachers who don't understand what this is referring to because they don't have that prior knowledge. They're not a part of the in-group and they can't make the inference to that TikTok meme. We also have negative politeness. Now, we know that negative face is all about a person's desire to have control, autonomy, and that idea of self-determination. And it's really important to remember that even though this is called negative face, these aren't bad things, right? As humans, we want to have some control over the things that we do with ourselves, with our lives. And so negative politeness refer to those acts which maintain or enhance the negative face of a specific individual or group. And this involves language choices which make a person or a group feel as though they have control in a situation. They have the ability to agree or disagree. They have the ability to choose what they do with their time with themselves. On the flip side, negative face threatening acts refer to those acts which challenge or threaten the negative face of a specific group or individual. They make someone feel as though they don't have control. Now, I mentioned teachers when we were talking about positive politeness, and if you're at a school, you actually hear lots of language every day that is all about maintaining, enhancing, but also threatening your negative face, because teachers do this all the time. So if you've ever heard a teacher say something like, "It's really important that tonight everyone does the set homework," this use of language could absolutely be considered a negative face threatening act, because it's making the specific in-group of students feel as though they have to complete their homework. On the flip side, if you've ever heard a teacher say something like, "It's not mandatory, but it's a really good idea to complete exercise 3 if you're looking for some extension," well, this absolutely could be a language choice that represents one of those negative politeness strategies. Because by this teacher presenting and explicitly using that adjective mandatory to talk about exercise 3, they are giving students a choice and they're maintaining their negative face. They're giving them the option to say, "Oh, yes, I'm going to do activity 3," or, "Oh, actually, I don't think I am going to do activity 3, because it gives students the choice to say, "Oh, yes, I am definitely going to do that," or, "Oh, actually, I don't think I am." Now, when we're analysing face in a text, it's really important to remember to, number one, identify the specific language feature that maintains or threatens face. It's really important when we're analysing ways that language choices impact positive and negative face, that we tie our analysis back to specific language features. So we might talk specifically about the use of slang. We might talk about imperatives. We might talk about jargon. We might talk about declarative sentences. But it's really important that you've got a specific language feature in your analysis clearly identified whenever you're talking about face. And then number two, it's really important to clearly explain how this specific language feature maintains or threatens the positive or negative face of a specific group by discussing either how this language feature positions the audience to feel as though they are respected or belong for positive face, for acts that maintain positive face, or positions the audience to feel as though they are not respected or do not belong for acts that threaten positive face, or positions the audience to feel as though they have control and autonomy for acts that maintain negative face, or positions the audience to feel as though they don't have that control and autonomy for acts that threaten negative face. Now, this can sometimes be a little bit tricky in our analysis, because here we have to talk about the ways that the language is making this audience, making a specific individual or group feel. And as humans, our brains are sometimes really great at looking at a text and going, "Oh, that language reflects belonging. That language makes this person feel as though they are in control." But our brains aren't always as good at identifying the specific language features that do these things, that impact face in these ways. So if you ever see a question around face, or you're answering a short answer question around purpose and choosing to use that politeness strategy's purpose, where you're required to talk about face, make sure that you've got for yourself a really clear plan of how you're going to explain how those specific language features you've identified allow this text to either maintain positive face, threaten positive face, maintain negative face, or threaten negative face. Now, we're going to have a go at this with a text that you might not have seen before. So this is a Queensland Health Facebook post that they shared after the release of Taylor Swift's new album, The Life of a Showgirl. And I'm going to give you a minute to have a read of this text, but also see if you can identify in this text some specific language features that maintain the positive face of Australian Taylor Swift fans, the Swifties out there. Can you identify language or language that challenges the positive face of individuals who are not fans of Taylor Swift? Or language that maintains the negative face of Swifties? or language that challenges the negative face of Australian individuals. So take a moment, have a read of this text, and see what you can find. Okay, how'd we go? So, when we're thinking about language that maintains positive face, we're specifically looking for language here that shows that Queensland Health respect Taylor Swift fans, but also language that shows that in-group membership and belonging. And so we could look at the first sentence in this text. We could look at this compound sentence. You're only as hot as your last hit, baby, but don't let it be because of the sun. Now, we've got that first independent clause, you're only as hot as your last hit, baby, which if you're also a Swiftie, you'll be able to infer that this is a line from one of Taylor Swift's songs. So we could talk about this independent clause as language that requires inference, and we've got two pieces of metalanguage there that's maintaining the positive face of Australian Swifties by using language that they will be able to recognise and infer as coming from one of the songs off the new album. We could also talk about, if you look at that third sentence, the use of bejeweled and shimmer. Here we've also got two more lexemes. Here, we've also got some more inference that Swifties can make to Taylor Swift's iconic song, Bejeweled. But it's not enough to just say here that Queensland Health use lexemes. We'd be looking for a much more specific analysis to tell us the word class. And so shimmer here is a noun. What about bejeweled though? So bejeweled here is an adjective and shimmer is a noun. And so if we were going to fully analyse this as an example of language that maintains the positive face of Australian Swifties, we might talk about how the use of the adjective bejeweled and the noun shimmer allow Queensland Health to maintain the positive face of Australian Taylor Swift fans by using terms that Swifties will be able to infer are from a previous Taylor Swift song, reinforcing that in-group membership by using language that has an additional connotation for this in-group. Because of course, we all know that Taylor Swift lyrics mean something very specific if you're a fan of Taylor Swift. Now, on the flip side, how'd you go finding language that challenges the positive face of individuals who are not fans of Taylor Swift and, let's be honest, therefore have some questionable music taste? So in this Queensland Health post, there absolutely might be people who are not aware that Taylor Swift's new album is called The Life of a Showgirl. And so when reading this noun phrase might be very confusing, particularly if you can't make that inference. And so this might challenge the positive face of individuals who aren't Swifties because they're not able to make that inference. And this information then becomes much more difficult to understand. It's much less coherent if the audience can't make this inference. Now, if we turn our attention to negative face, how do we go finding language features that maintain the negative face of Swifties? What in this text makes the audience feel as though they have some control? Now, I'm going to be honest. Of all of the questions I've asked you today, this one is probably the most difficult because we've clearly got language here that challenges the negative face of Australian individuals. We've got those listed imperatives that begin with that lovely emoji of a sun with slip on a long sleeves shirt, slop on some SPF 50 plus, slap on a broad brim hat, seek shade, and slide on some wraparound sunnies. And here, these imperative sentences absolutely challenge the negative face of Australian individuals because they're clearly telling us what to do. They're giving a clear directive. And there's not really a capacity for a member of the audience to challenge these statements. There's a very clear directive on what we should be doing. And it's challenging that idea of control that the audience have going into reading this text. I think if we were going to talk about language that maintains negative face, though, perhaps it's this last sentence that we might look at. Being sun safe is just the way we roll in Queensland, and baby, that's sun safety for you. And here, this might maintain the negative face of Swifties if they're not from Queensland and they're not currently in Queensland. Because here, Queensland Health are really clearly emphasising that they are sun safe using that alliterative verb phrase, but not everyone is in Queensland. And so here, if you're not from Queensland, if you're not part of that in-group, then perhaps there's language that maintains negative face, because then you may be able to say, well, as someone who lives in New South Wales or Tasmania or any of the other states or territories, well, maybe I'm not going to be sun safe and I'll make that choice. Admittedly, being sun safe is absolutely a strategic choice for all people. So this post doesn't really have language that maintains negative face. But if you think you found a better example, add it to the comments below. That's all we have time for.